Many of you, I'm sure, have seen the movie Night Shift. So we will be organizing, and I'm going to ask you, I know there are several of you that are sitting, some are standing or whatever, to work with the whip's office, because we're going to organize who's going to be here. We've just heard that the Speaker's office has released a press release that says that this is a political stunt. So it's understandable why they would shut the cameras off. So they couldn't hear the American citizens couldn't hear the very poignant stories that each and every member that's come to this floor has had to say. We're staying here. As John Lewis said, we're getting in the way to get a vote. And we want that vote, and if that means getting in the way, we're staying here. We'll be, I'm told also from our leadership, that they will be providing food. And so there will be an opportunity for people to leave the floor, not entirely, but leave the floor in groups, be fed, and be prepared to be here. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Unanimous. Now, the next speaker, Mike Quigley, from the great state of Illinois.
In my 7 years here,
speak up.
I've often been asked,
Use the mic.
is this a tough vote? Is this a courageous vote to vote for gun control? Now, it's a matter of perspective, and it's relative, and it's different for different districts. We all have to respect the fact that in some districts, if you differ with the NRA at all, you're gone. Yep. Let's talk about courage from a relative perspective here. In Chicago, my hometown, the number one fear Chicago public students have is getting shot. I don't know what it was when you were in grade school, but my number one fear when I was in grade school was not getting shot. Bad grades, getting in trouble, braces. Trivial, right? The number one fear on the minds of kids trying to go to learn to or from school every day is the fear of getting shot. It takes courage to walk home for a little kid. So how much courage can a relative sense does it take to make one vote? Why are we here? So I'll speak briefly because I just have one young man to talk about. His name was Blair Holt. His mother was a fire person in Chicago. His father, a police officer. He was an honor student at Julian High School. And on May 10th, 2007, he was on a crowded bus, CTA bus, on his way home with his friends when gunfire erupted on the bus. And he jumped in front of the fire and shielded his friends. He was 16. And I would suggest that it's obvious that when it comes to saving someone from gunfire, he was far more courageous than our colleagues. So for Blair and his parents, let's do something to honor that memory, in the sense that none of these gun victims should die in vain, that something good should come from all of this, and then we move forward together. Because I know, John, there's a Bible verse, no greater love a man should have than he that shall lie down for his friends. Blair did that, we can do the same. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. God, I'm sorry.
Marcia Fudge, followed by Susan Davis, the great lady from Ohio.
Yeah.
The immediate past president of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah.
Marcia Fudge.
John.
Yeah, home of the champion, Cleveland Cavaliers.
All right.
You know what? I have been sitting and I have been listening. I need to ask the Republicans, what do they really stand for? We stand for a moment of silence. I want you to know, probably most of you don't know, I'm in a very small club in this house. I've lost a family member to gun violence. My only brother, my only sibling, died at the hands of a gun. I want to know why they didn't stand for him. Because they didn't. 5-year-old killed in my neighborhood sitting on his mother's lap. Why didn't they stand for him? 5-year-old boy playing in his backyard, shot down playing football. Why didn't they stand for him? I want to know, what do they stand for? Did they stand for Trayvon Martin? No. Did they stand for Jordan Davis? No. Did they stand for Hadithia? No. Did they stand for Michael Garner or Tamir Rice? No, they didn't. What do they stand for? They talk about mental illness. Let me tell you what makes a kid mentally ill. Living with violence every single day. Living in houses where they are held hostage by people who shouldn't have guns. Domestic abusers. Let me tell you why these kids have problems. Because their classmates can go out at 10 and 12 years old and get a gun faster than I can go through TSA. That is why these kids have mental illness. They're afraid to walk to school. They're afraid to go home. Where do they go? But my Christian friends, who always talk about their Christian values, where is your morality? Where is your moral compass? You talk about the God you serve. You can't serve the same God I serve and not care about babies who are dying in the street.
That's right.
So I want to know, what do you stand for? Next time somebody else dies, that's not a big deal. I want you to stand then. Stand up for what's right.
Another announcement as we call up Susan Davis, who will be our next speaker. Above me in marble is a famous quote by Daniel Webster behind us. And if I might paraphrase, I think it epitomizes what's going on the floor today that so many of you have eloquently spoken about. And basically, it was an urging by Webster for members of Congress that in our day and generation, may we perform something worthy of being remembered. Today, John Lewis, Catherine Clark led a group onto this floor determined that we would get a vote. Determined, as John Lewis said, that if we have to get in the way to get a vote, we will. You all got spine? Yes. You all prepared to stay? Yes. You all prepared to stand with John Lewis? Yes. And when the question is asked, where were you? We were standing with John Lewis. Yes. That's where we were.
I'll sit on the floor for a while.
And to everybody who's been here for many hours today, and I know that you're willing to stay here beyond that, I just wanted to remind myself and everybody as well, I think we deal with some pretty complicated issues here. It takes people a long time to work through them. This one to me is not so complicated. And I think when you go out to people and you talk to them about it, it seems pretty simple to them as well. I've spoken with my colleagues. I've asked them about this. I've had them ask me about what's happening today. And every time I ask, they seem to start talking about all the reasons that we shouldn't do this. I think we should think about why we should do it. That's what we have to acknowledge here today. A lot of us raised our hand earlier. And someone asked, do we have a child? Do we have a neighbor? Do we have someone that we know who we're very close to who died at the hands of a gun in a very, very wrong circumstance. Well, many years ago, I led a program of high school students, and John Lewis has been so gracious and so wonderful to meet with these group of students, not the same, a different group every year that come here to Washington. And they've been trying to understand what makes cities work. What kind of leadership do you need in cities to make that happen? Well, the first year that I led this program, with the help of the Price family, of course, because it was their grandson, in whose honor this program was started, a young man in that program now named Willie James Jones, who we all just thought someday, not just us, but others thought he was going to be a great leader. Some people even looked at this kid and said he could be president of the United States someday. He had a 4-year scholarship to Cornell. At his graduation party, someone came by, a drive-by shooting, it was not that kind of machine gun that we're talking about, and shot in the direction of a few kids where Willie was standing. And in great grief, the 50 students who were with me and with Willie at his funeral kind of came up to me, and we were talking, and I said, why Willie? What happened? He said, Mrs. Davis, don't you know, Willie didn't know enough to duck. No, Willie was busy trying to be a surgeon someday and go on and really be a great person, wanting to give back to his community. Well, some of you may recall that after Sandy Hook, a lot of us invited people here who came because they wanted to be in the audience after that. They wanted to give witness and help to the president as he discussed the importance of this Congress moving forward and doing something about gun violence. Something major about gun violence. And here we're doing something pretty simple, I think. Well, I had his family, Willie's family, came here that day. And that was such an incredibly moving opportunity to them. And they shared their story of Willie, and Willie's dad walked around with a picture of Willie and gave it to everybody that he ran into. These things stay with people all their lives. And we have to give support for that. So as we think about what we do, no fly, no buy, simple, makes sense, background checks that really do look into what this person has been doing over the last number of months and years, when we evaluate whether or not they need that weapon of mass destruction. How anybody could need a weapon of mass destruction is beyond me, but some of my Republican friends tell me it's very complicated. We shouldn't try and simplify this issue. The other thing I just want to say, because we're talking about people who have been killed by this gun violence, what we don't see the children that are affected by this gun violence. You know, just the people alone. Since Orlando, 500 people were shot in the United States. More than 200 of those were killed. But what about all those children? What about the children out there that are even taught how to prepare if an active shooter comes into their school classroom? There was a picture of a little girl the other day standing on the rim of a toilet because she had been taught to go there and close the door in the bathroom. What are we doing? Why can't we make this point? What is it that's stopping people from moving forward? We talk about people being on the wrong side of history. There is not a right side of history when you're opposed to making good changes in our laws in this country. We have to do that. We have to think about those children that are affected every single day. We are a resilient people, and we raise children to be resilient. But you can't make them resilient in the face of a machine gun. They have no escape, and nobody has an escape. Let's do this, folks. Thank you for being here. Please, this is going to be something that we don't want our colleagues to decide that they can't do this because it's political. We want to join with them. We're not pointing fingers. We're saying, come with us. Do this. this together. We can do it together. If you just realize how important this is, listen to people. Listen to people in your district. Thank you.
Our good friend and my seatmate on the Ways and Means Committee, Mike Thompson, just handed me this news flash that NRA radio show has put out. Here's the news comment. The NRA radio show compares participants in Representative John Lewis's gun violence sit-in to criminals and terrorists. Does that firm up your determination to stand on this floor?
Yes.
For a body that has held hostage a group of individuals that won't even allow us to vote, to call John Lewis a terrorist? Because he's getting in the way. Because he's getting in the way. Because he wants to see the kind of justice and results that the American people not only want and need, but deserve. All we're asking for is a vote. If that's a terrorist action, then I guess we're all terrorists.
Patriots.
Patriots. Thank you. And now, is Louise Slaughter here? We'll skip Mike Honda. Is Mike Honda here? Brenda Lawrence then has the floor. We'll get back to Mike.
I was just informed that our Speaker of the House is having a press conference. Isn't it interesting that in the middle of this demonstration of a call to action, our leader prefers to be in front of a camera than to take the seat of leadership in the United States Congress and bring the body together so that we can pass common sense gun reform? It is interesting, ladies and gentlemen, this amazing country, the democracy that we love, one of the reasons that motivated me to go on public service, and I was encouraged by a grandmother who did not even finish high school, that this country, being an African American and a woman, going through the struggles of civil rights, she said, this is the country that will give you an opportunity. A country that will open its arms and embrace you. And you have freedoms and you have rights based on the Constitution. I witnessed when our Constitution was not writing that people stood up and they demanded that our Constitution reflect the philosophy of democracy. Today, we are sitting here because, you know, if you love our Constitution, you must know it's not Democrat, it's not Republican. It was the coming together of two bodies working together in conflict and compromise, and we have what countries around the world envy: our democracy, our freedoms, and our rights. The Republicans can't take credit for it, nor can the Democrats. Now we're talking about gun control. I'm proud to stand here as a Democrat with all of my colleagues, but this is a house with two parties. Yes. Where is the other party? We cannot move this country forward unless we come together and debate and legislate laws. We have a crisis in America. You've heard the names being read. You've heard the stories of representatives in this House who have lost loved ones to gun violence. We're not the only ones who represent districts that had deaths or shootings as a result of gun violence. My colleagues who are not here today have experienced the same thing. What is stopping democracy today is the failure to come and even bring the issue forward. That's why we're here. You haven't heard anyone say Republican, you must vote a certain way. They're saying, Republicans, come to your seat in Congress. Mr. Leader, come take your seat and let's do the work. All of the calls that I have received today has been stay your ground. You're on the right track. I'm a Republican, but we need to address this issue in America. Don't give up. We're in the right place, Democrats. And I want my Republican colleagues to come and take their seats and legislate. If you have an issue with gun control, come to the table and have the political courage to do your job. You are now in the election year where you're out there campaigning and saying, send me to Congress, I'll work for you. Where are you working today? Where are you today? And what are you telling your constituents?
All right.
We're on the floor of the people's house. We have not shut a single door. There is nothing restricting a single Republican from walking in this door and sitting down and start legislating. That's right. Where are you? Where are you? And today, we are sitting here today because we do not want another blood stain on the streets of America to go unanswered. We don't want another cry of a mother, a sister, or a parent to go unheard. I stand here today. We're only asking for two things. We're asking that if you are on the terrorist list, that you will not be able to buy a gun. And some people will say, well, you know what? What if I'm on that list erroneously? How many of you in America has been a victim of identity fraud? We have a process to rectify that. If you came to the table, we could fix that issue. I don't want someone on that list erroneously, but if someone is on that list and we know that they have terrorist connections, they should not be able to buy a gun. And universal background checks. How many of you remember when you got your permit to drive a car? You could not drive it until a certain age, and you had to pass certain benchmarks in order to get it, and they test you and make you apply repeatedly through your life to validate that you are capable physically to drive a car. And you're talking about a gun that takes a life? Where are we, America? The country that I love with the Constitution and the rights and the freedoms that other countries wish they had. And here we are stuck. I invite my Republican colleagues to walk through this door. I invite them to take up those two issues and let's come together and legislate and let's take care of America. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. I just want to make our colleagues aware of who, in what order people are going to be coming up. Next, we're going to hear from Bobby Scott, then John Delaney, Bill Keating, Bill Pasquale, and then Jim McGovern. So that's the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that will speak. And with that, let's turn it over from the man from Virginia, Bobby Scott.
Thank you. Thank you, John Lawson, and thank you, John Lewis, for bringing us together. This is a proud day to be a Democrat because we have established the fact that it's not going to be business as usual anymore. We had business as usual after Virginia Tech, after Colorado, after South Carolina, even after Newtown, Connecticut. Business as usual, not doing anything, but now we know that business as usual and a moment of silence is not going to be enough. We know what to do. We had a task force that studied the issues and came up with an agenda that included the assault weapons ban, a limitation on the size of magazines, because we found that when you have to switch magazines, it's an opportunity to intervene in these mass shootings. If you limit the magazine size, you limit the number of people who will die. Background checks, including no fly, no buy, gun show loopholes, and make sure everybody gets a background check to make sure that the guns don't get in the hands of people that shouldn't get it. Comprehensive mental health, because you've seen in all these shootings that there's obviously untreated mental health, and crime prevention generally. Invest in young people early to get them on the right track, to keep them on the right track so they're not interested in buying guns at all. We know what to do, and today we're telling the public that doing nothing is no longer an option. It's not going to be business as usual. So thank you, Democrats, for coming together. If we stick together, we will get a vote. Thank you very much. And if there's no bill, no break.
No bill!
No break!
No bill!
No break!
No bill!
No break!
My buddy.
Thank you, Bobby. And next we're going to hear from the gentleman from Massachusetts. Hope you all get to visit Cape Cod later this year. Bill Keating.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Before I came to this chamber, I was a district attorney, and I got to see in very stark and concrete terms just what happens in these kinds of tragedies. Tragedies where hatred and violence and guns came together to make a lethal mix. And I would come to those scenes, and I would stand and talk with and hold hands with mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and grandmothers and loved ones of people that were killed because of this violence. And I got to see the courage of first responders coming to the scene, the EMTs, the firefighters, the police, working frantically to save lives, working feverishly to limit injuries, coming on duty and off duty to the scenes to do what they're supposed to do as professionals and Americans, as members of a community. Now, can you imagine for a second if there was a tragedy like this and people were lying helplessly and those first responders didn't show up? They didn't answer the call. They took a walk. They weren't professional. Can you imagine the outrage in this country if a scene like that happened and they didn't show up? Why, every newspaper would have it in the front page. Every TV station would have it as a lead story, and Americans would sit there and say, what is the matter with these people? They have a job to do. How could they do that? Now, regrettably, we're going to have more tragedies. We've had 34,000 people killed from hatred and violence and guns since Sandy Hook. 34,000. So we know it's going to happen again. We know we have this issue. And America is sending out a 911 to the only first responders that they have. That's us. That's Congress. There's no one else to answer that call. That's our job. That's our duty. Speaker Ryan, answer the call.
Answer the call.
Answer the call.
Answer the call.
Republicans in committees, answer the call. My Republican colleagues, Americans, answer the call. It's time to answer the call. It's time to do our duty. It's time to act like Americans that care about their fellow Americans, that want to stop this from happening. And that's our job. We're the first responders. Let's tell our colleagues, answer the call, do your job.
Not only a member of the Ways and Means Committee, the Intelligence Committee, and also serves on several caucuses, including the Firefighters Caucus, as we all can remember those brave men and women going up the stairs in the trade towers as people were coming down. A person who lives, breathes, and needs service to his constituency and cares deeply about this issue. Our own gentleman from New Jersey, the man from Patterson on the Passaic, Bill Pascrell.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, the other Michael. for helping us come together today. John, I know you don't like this, but I'll do it anyway. I have the luxury of being here. I am so proud of what you represent because you bring it to the floor and you bring it outside. You're not two different people. You're the same people. The same person that speaks on this floor is the same person we know outside.
Yeah.
We honor you.
Yeah.
We honor you. And we will never let you down. And we have your back. Because when you have your heart in something, we will always have our support to you. Thank you, John Lewis, for all that you believe. 20 years ago when I came to the Congress, just a few days after I was sworn, Matthew Gross was at the Empire State Building with his brother and was shot down. I visited him in a hospital, met his brother Don, who is now the head of the Brady Organization Against Gun Violence. 20 years. If you remember 20 years ago, who else had a tragedy within their family? Within our family. Carolyn McCarthy. They lost their husband to violence on the Long Island train. Carolyn is always at the forefront to end gun violence, not to take guns away. See, they want to put us in that light. They want us to be the evilgoers. But we respect the Second Amendment as we do all the amendments of the Constitution. But we don't just pick and choose which ones we want. This is the total Constitution for all Americans, regardless of their persuasion. Now, I want to know why the other side, my brothers and sisters, why are they so afraid? The song in my church, Be Not Afraid. We sing it. Be not afraid. What in God's name are you afraid of? Do you think that the NRA going to send you to summer camp up in the woods in Maine or something? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid? I used to take my vacations in Maine. I love Maine. Some of my best friends live in Maine. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so proud of all of you. In Isaiah 6, chapter 8, someone asks, who shall I send? The Lord says, who shall I send?
Preach.
Each one of us, whether you're Democrat or Republican, independent, I don't care what you are, how you cook your food, how you talk, how you raise your family, each one of us has a responsibility.
That's right.
Send me, Lord.
Preach.
All of us are being asked to step up to the plate.
Yeah.
Not to condemn anybody, not to point fingers at anybody, but to join together in what we know is right. This is what we got to get the other side to understand. This has nothing to do with political points. Most of us have D- or F all our lives from that group. Ain't gonna help. Nothing's gonna help us in that regard. We have to come together, my friends. In Psalm 91, one of my favorite psalms.
Come on, Bill.
My God is whom I trust.
Come on.
For it is he who delivers you from the snare of the trapper and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions. Do not be afraid. Under his wings you may seek refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and bulwark. You will not be afraid of the terror by night. Please, my brothers and sisters, don't be afraid. They cannot send you to summer camp. You are here with us. Let's do the job we're getting paid for to do. God bless America.
God bless Bill Pascrell. Let's hear it for Bill Pascrell. John Delaney.
Yeah. Bring it, Jerry. Bring it, brother.
Thank you, John.
So we all have a lot of questions here today. My first question is, since when did one faction of one party in one body in the Congress of the United States start believing that it could entirely control the agenda of the Congress and undermine the will of the American people? Since when did one lobbying organization, just one, not a diverse coalition of interest groups, one lobbying organization believe that it could bully and threaten members of the Congress of the United States so that they oppose bipartisan legislation that reflects the will of the people? And since when did one industry believe that it could interfere with the justice that the American people are demanding we deliver to them in terms of making them safe? When have so few gotten in the way of the will of so many? And that is exactly what's happening on this issue. And it's not only preventing us from being able to do the obvious measures on gun safety that all of my friends talked about here today, but it really threatens representative democracy as we know it. Because the American people are clear on this issue. They are clear on this issue. Democrats, Republicans agree by large majorities that we, their Congress, who they've elected, should be doing something on this issue. And why do they agree? Because they've been paying attention. They've been paying attention. And they've been watching the carnage. And they've been seeing it, and it's made them sad. They've cried for the victims. It's made them scared. It's made them afraid to bring their children to places that people never used to think about something like this could happen. And it's made them angry at their core that their democracy is failing. And that's what's happening here today. But the other thing that's happening here today is we're saying no more. We're drawing a line in the sand. And we're saying today it stops. Because the business of this House is not resuming until we bring to the floor the bill that the majority of the American people want us to address. It's hard to almost say it because it's so obvious. In any other world other than the House of Representatives of the United States of America in 2016, would you think there would be a question as to whether people on the no-fly list, as deemed by the FBI, should be able to buy a gun?
Terrorists.
They want us to bring that bill. We are drawing a line in the sand. We're saying no more. We've got the best line in the sand drawer in the world as our leader. Thank you for teaching us again how to do this. God bless you.
God bless you.
Jim McGovern.
You know, when I ran for Congress 20 years ago, I did so because I wanted the chance, I wanted the privilege to come here and serve in the greatest deliberative body on the planet. This was the place where all the great issues confronting our country and the world would be debated. This is the place where all the important issues of the day would be considered and debated and voted on. But sadly, under this Republican leadership, this United States House of Representatives has become a place where trivial issues get debated passionately and important ones not at all.
And our Periscope feed from the House floor, courtesy of Representative Scott Peters of California, freezing up there. It went pretty well for quite a while. A number of tweets coming in wondering if Representative Peters carried some extra batteries with him today. We've been covering the sit-in on the House floor. The House Democrats have been staging a protest, sitting in since before noon today. It began with Representative John Lewis of Georgia, and the House quickly went into recess shortly after noon. The sit-in continues, however, but because the House is in recess, subject to the call of the chair, the cameras that are operated by the House staff are off, and we've been relying on several Periscope feeds, the one you've been watching from Scott Peters of California, also one from Beto O'Rourke, and I believe we have that one up for you now. So we'll go back to the floor where Democratic Congressman Jim McGovern is continuing to speak as the sit-in rolls on.
Each and every massacre that occurs in this country, because we have massacres on a regular basis. We don't stop to have a moment of silence for the individuals who get killed each and every day all throughout this country as a result of gun violence. We only do that when there's a massacre. And that is it. And all we are asking is that we have an opportunity to try to find some solutions to try to prevent this senseless violence. That is what all this controversy is about. All we are asking the
And as you see, technology not necessarily our friend today, but we have been able to get a good bit of the video from the House Democrats who were staging this sit-in protest on the floor today, asking for a vote on what they call a no-fly, no-buy gun control measure in the wake of the mass shooting in Orlando recently. John Lewis of Georgia was on the floor earlier today. The House leadership attempted to come into session at noon. They got the prayer done, the Pledge of Allegiance, and then the Democrats who were staging the sit-in continued to make noise, and the House gavelled out, went into recess subject to the call of the chair. That's where we stand right now. So we do not have access to the House cameras. C-SPAN does not own or operate those cameras. We simply take a feed from the recording staff at the House. Same goes for our coverage of the Senate over on C-SPAN too. As I mentioned, Senator John Lewis of Georgia began the sit-in, and we caught up with Representative John Lewis of Georgia off the floor for a minute or so during the sit-in. We'll show you that now.
Congressman John Lewis, when did you start to plan this sit-in?
The past 2 or 3 days. We thought about it, and we made a decision that we should do something out of the ordinary. Most of the members didn't even know about only a handful of us. We never said anything to our leadership, but we felt that it was time for us to do something. And it had to be dramatic, had to be out of the ordinary, and we acted.
It's been going on now, what, 6-7 hours? How's it going?
It is going very, very well. We've heard some unbelievable statements and speeches from our colleague. They're doing it with a great sense of dignity. It's in keeping with the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. I never thought, when I came to Congress and been here for almost 30 years, to see members occupying the well of the House. By sitting down, we're really standing up for the very best in the American tradition.
How are the negotiations with the House leadership?
Well, we have not had any direct talks. Our leadership may be talking with the leadership, but they're not talking with those of us who initiated the action.
Thank you, Congressman John Lewis.
Well, thank you very much.
Democratic Congressman John Lewis of Georgia leading the way this morning. This sit-in protest by House Democrats in the House chamber today, throughout the day, asking for a vote on a no-fly, no-buy gun control measure. Republicans are meeting at this hour. The Republican conference had their day kind of turned away today, turned upside down today. The Republican schedule, the agenda for today was to work on the fifth appropriations bill for 2017, a $22 billion measure for financial services agencies. Of course, the House went into recess. The Republicans now meeting at this hour to discuss what the schedule might be for the rest of the week. One tweet, though, we did get this from Reuters Politics, this word that U.S. House Speaker Ryan says he will not bring up gun control bill that takes away constitutional rights. That in response to the sit-in by House Democrats at this hour. It continues. It began about 11:30 this morning, so 7 hours or so so far. And I understand we have the live feed back via Periscope, so let's take a look at that now.
I'd like to just put a little perspective on all this that a number of others have already done, and I think at least at one level something that hasn't, a couple things maybe haven't been said. But at one level, this is about whether or not this is a democratic institution. I did serve back in a time when every bill and every idea got its day in committee on the floor of this House. We had a chance to argue the merits, the pros, the cons, have a vote. It's called democracy. The people's house, and that's what the Speaker and the Republican leadership are denying this Congress and the American people, and we have to put a stop to it. Stop it. Well, let me remind everybody else of a couple of other little things here, in case you haven't thought about it. There are people in America that can't vote because they wrote a bad check. They can't, excuse me. There are people in America who can't buy a gun because they wrote a bad check. That's true. Yeah, they can't vote either. Yeah. There are people in America who can't buy a gun because they stole the car.
That's right. That's right.
There are people in America who can't buy a gun because they bought or sold a controlled substance.
That's right.
That's right. There are people in this country that have been denied the right to own a gun for a whole wide range of offenses, none of which are violent in nature and threaten other people's lives. That's right.
That's right. That's right.
And what is this about? Well, what is this about? This is about denying the right of people who have sworn allegiance to a terrorist group and committed to wanting to kill Americans, and we want to let them buy a gun? Are we kidding? Oh, no. Yeah, no fly, no buy. No fly, no buy. No buy. Let me tell you something else.
Tell us.
Most of my colleagues here represent big urban districts. I represent a rural area.
Here, here.
Everybody in my neighborhood has shotguns and deer rifles. Hell, I was 19 or 20 before I ate my first chicken and roast beef. I grew up on duck and venison and fish and all kinds of wild game. We support the Second Amendment.
Absolutely.
But we are not adverse to gun safety. That's right. That's right. And let me tell you something you might not know. How many of you knew you can only have 3 shells in your gun when you're shooting ducks? All right, that's a fact. 3 shells in your gun when you're shooting ducks. Brother Thompson knows that. That's right. That's right. And that's been that way through our entire life, has it not, Mike? That's right. And you know why they have that rule?
No.
Trying to save ducks. Trying to save ducks. That's right.
That's right.
And now this Republican Congress is trying to say to us, they're trying to say to us that we shouldn't give the same rights to our elementary school children to protect them that we give to the ducks? Huh? They're trying to say that we shouldn't give the same rights to men and women in places of worship? That they shouldn't have the right, the same right to take as ducks? People going to a movie theater to have a little fun some evening shouldn't have the same safety rights as ducks?
That's not funny, man.
How about our LGBT community that just wanted to go out on a Saturday night, engage in a little revelry and a little dancing and have some fun? We can't give them the same protection that we give the ducks. Let's restore democracy to the House of Representatives. Let us demand that we have a vote, no fly, no buy, no bill, no break. That's what this is all about. Thank you.
How about the man from the land of Garrison Keillor? How about another round of applause for Rex Nolan? Derek Kilmer, you're up next.
Follow that, baby.
So many of us who were in appropriations earlier today actually got a chance to vote on an amendment that said if you're on the terrorist watch list, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun. And as we debated that amendment, each one of us stood and we talked about human beings who were victims of gun violence. People from Orlando and from San Bernardino. I spoke about a gentleman named Damian Maines, who worked in environmental services in San Bernardino. And, you know, before I spoke about him, I read about him. And he was a father. He was someone who on Halloween dressed up as Abraham Lincoln, and who on Christmas dressed up as Santa Claus, and yet at a Christmas party was gunned down by a terrorist. And as I read about him and I heard my colleagues speak about other victims of gun violence, it struck me that every single one of these people is someone's son and someone's daughter.
Hear, hear.
You know, the two most important days of my life were April 4th, 2006 and July 23rd, 2009. And those are the days that Sophie and Tess Kilmer were born. Probably the most common question I get when I'm back home is, dear God, why would anyone want to be in Congress right now when it's such a mess and you got two little kids? And my response is always the same. It's because it's a mess and I got two little kids. And I should give a rip about what kind of country they grow up in. Right. I will tell you, every time I get on an airplane to fly here and leave them, the first thing I do on that plane is I write them a letter. And I try to explain what I'm doing, and I try to explain why I'm going to be gone this week. And I want them, one, because I want them to be good, informed citizens of the world, and two, because I want them to understand why their dad is gone so much. And sometimes that's hard, because oftentimes we're voting on stuff that doesn't seem important, and sometimes it's hard because we're not voting on things that are important. And I love it that they're informed, but sometimes it's really hard for them to be informed. It's scary for them to be informed. One of the toughest days I've had was back here calling my daughters after the day of school and saying, how was school today? And my 6-year-old, who was in first grade, said, we did a drill today where we had to hide in a coat closet and hide in a cubby and cover ourselves with a coat. Like, how messed up is that? That our kids are practicing active shooter drills. And we can't take a vote. You know, after this awful occurrence in Orlando, my wife asked me, so is Congress going to do anything about it? And I said, well, sweetheart, there are bills that many of my colleagues and I have sponsored to say, let's just strengthen background checks. Let's make sure that if you're a suspected terrorist, you can't buy a weapon. And she said, so are you going to pass those? And I said, I'm not sure. I said, we're in the minority. And she said, well, then what good are you? And I want to say thank you, Mr. Lewis, and I want to thank Catherine Clark, because we're trying. We are trying. And I guess I just asked the speaker and my friends from the other side of the aisle, what good are we if we can't cast a simple vote to say people who are suspected terrorists can't buy a gun to kill innocent Americans? What good are we? I'm here for two reasons, Sophie and Tess. Right. And I'm here for every child and every parent who's been a victim of gun violence, and I'm here to make sure it doesn't happen again. It's time we pass these bills.
Gwen Graham, as she's coming to the podium, we want to again we want to thank everybody who's been in the gallery, but I also want the members to know that there are people gathering outside the Capitol in support of what you're doing. And as we said earlier, the Sergeant, yes, Tim, I'll recognize you.
A point of personal privilege.
You have one.
I would like to thank John Larson.
No.
Oh, yes, that one. Thank you, John. I am from the northern part of Florida. I was in Orlando when the shootings occurred. I woke up, I have a really bad habit. I look at my phone all through the night. I know. But this night, I woke up about 3 in the morning, I looked at my phone, and I never went back to sleep. I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. They're grown. Unlike Derek's. And where's Derek? Where are you? I tell you, everyone here in this chamber that has young children, you have my immense respect. My children are grown. 25, 23, and he'll be 20, my youngest, in 8 days. Finally gonna have a beer. But I'm gonna have the honor on Friday night of giving the keynote address in Orlando to the Orange County Democrats. So I've been working on these remarks because they mean a lot. They mean a lot to the people of Orlando. They mean a lot to the people of Florida. So I thought I would read a little bit of it tonight. Mina Justice woke up at 2 in the morning to the sound of her phone. It was every mother's worst nightmare. Her son was in trouble. In the club, they're shooting. Instinctively, as a mom, she asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm trapped in the bathroom. Pulse, downtown. Call the police. I'm gonna die." Mina called the police and continued texting her son, waiting for him to respond. 30 minutes later, "Call them, Mommy. Now. He's coming. I'm gonna die. Hurry. He's in the bathroom with us." Mina waited 15 more hours before finding out her son, Eddie Justice, did not survive. I can't imagine the terror in Mina's heart when she received those texts All of us here who are parents, can you imagine? Can you imagine what that would be like? To be so helpless and know that your child, his or her life is in danger. My heart breaks for Mina. It breaks for all parents all across Orlando, Florida, our country. My heart breaks for all of those who lost their lives at Pulse. We need more love. I'm a firm believer in love. We need more compassion. We need more understanding of each other in this country. And following Orlando, we have seen more love. We have seen more compassion, and we have seen more understanding in the wake of the shooting. Thousands of Floridians lined up to give blood. Equality Florida started a fund for victims that broke records. And Orlando's First Baptist Church, which opposes gay marriage, opened their doors for a vigil. They prayed and cried alongside the LGBT community. We need more of this love, not just in the wake of mass violence, but always. And while I'd like to talk just about love, about community, and about coming together, the truth is we need more than that. We need smarter gun safety laws to keep our streets, our schools, our sanctuaries, whether it's a church in Charleston or a club in Orlando. We need smarter laws to make our communities safer. So I am such a proud member of this Congress. I won't have been here very long when I leave, but I will tell each of y'all what an honor it is to be here with you here today, and I will be here all night. Thank God that there are people who recognize it is time for a change. Now is the time. No bill? No way. No bill? No way. No bill? No way. Congress can't sit by anymore or stand by anymore while Americans die. It's time for us to act.
Ed Perlmutter has a short, informative piece of information I asked him to deliver. Ed?
So outside, a crowd is beginning to develop. It's Moms Demand Action. And if we text Demand Action 64433, we will get more people to join them out on there to support what we're doing to end this crazy gun violence and to take two common sense bills up. No fly, no buy, and universal background checks. They're prepared to help us because that's what they want, and they demand action. Demand action 64433.
Doing God's work while we were here and missing her place in line, our next speaker, the great lady from the state of New York, Louise Slaughter, a direct descendant of Daniel Boone.
Yes.
How's that for a factoid?
So
Take that, Periscope.
For nothing. You know, it's nice that we can smile a little bit, but it's not really what we were able to do today. Just before we came down, my wonderful granddaughter, who works for the school system in Chicago, sent me a text message. And she said, Grandma, thank you for standing up so that no other teacher will have to go to the funeral of a student. Think about that a minute. You know, I was talking about it earlier today at the Rules Committee where we were trying to bring up the king of the bill that has bipartisan support, and all it does is says if you're on the no-fly zone, you can't buy a gun. They won't even consider that. It makes such common sense. So common sense does not prevail here as we know it. But for those of you who haven't been here as long as I have, and that's been a good while, you don't know that there was a time here that we had a ban on assault weapons, and it worked. Unfortunately, it expired. And was the point there was no chance in this world that we could extend it. But while we had it, it was so much better.
And we've at least temporarily lost our feed via Periscope, being provided to us from Representative Scott Peters of California. We've been going back and forth today to a couple of feeds via social media, one from Scott Peters, one from Beto O'Rourke of Texas, as we've been attempting to follow the House Democrats sit-in on the House floor. Democrats are protesting, demanding a vote on what they call a no-fly, no-buy gun control. That, of course, in the wake of the recent Orlando mass shooting. It does look like we have regained that feed from the House floor, so we'll go back to that now and follow it live here on C-SPAN.
He killed them. Now, imagine, you know, we really don't think about this enough. The people who have been victimized by the loss of their family, what does it do for them? I lost my husband a couple of years ago, and I know what loss is about, and maybe many of you do as well. There is such an empty spot. There are things that you can't bear to think about. There are memories. This was close to Christmas in Newtown when somebody came in with a gun and literally shot those little children to bits. Think about that. We have to look at it that way because that's what happened. We can't sugarcoat a bit.
So Scott Peters trying to work on his smartphone there to get that Periscope feed up and running. The reason we're dealing with this today is the House went into recess, subject to the call of the chair, shortly after noon as a result of this sit-in by House Democrats regarding this gun control legislation they would like to see a vote on. And when the House goes out, when the House is in recess, the cameras get shut down. The House runs those cameras and controls them. At C-SPAN, we simply take a feed of those House proceedings. So as much as we'd like to have our camera on the floor today, we don't have one there. So we've been relying on these social media feeds. Looks like we might have that back. Do we have that back? We'll try to go back to the floor of the House now as the protest, the sit-in by House Democrats continues.
But there have been 988 mass shootings in the United States since Newtown. 988. A mass shooting is classified as one where more than 3 people have died. Would you consider that? And I heard one of our colleagues today talking about Chicago, where just this weekend alone, 46 people were shot and 13 died, and that's every weekend's business practically in Chicago. That's what happens there. For heaven's sakes, let's not let this stop here. It is such a relief for me to see the Democrats standing up and say, we're really going to do something. We're going to be unified here, and we're going to stay here all night, and we will stay here till we get this done. We've been accused of a publicity stunt, all sorts of things. In the first place, I am totally offended that the Speaker of the House of the United States turned off the microphones. I am totally offended that we don't have anybody recording any of this. I'm totally offended that we have, for the longest time, and we said it in rules, we never get amendments here to do anything. They have literally shut out in the Rules Committee the voices of over half the Americans. Remember that we got 1 million more votes than they did, and they're in charge because they have reinforcement. Don't forget that. We are really the majority. But we can't have amendments, we can't speak, we can't do very much of anything. But this is the most egregious thing, I think, that I've seen in the many, many years that I've been in Congress. That we will not do what we're sworn to do, protect the lives of the people of the United States of America. And all there, as I said, there was a time when assault weapons were not on the street. I think it's almost criminal. I know it's not actually a criminal, but for gun dealers to sell those kinds of things to people. Maybe that's something we ought to look at. I'm very interested in what happens in that lawsuit about Newtown. That may give us an opening, really, to do something. But anyway, I'm happy to stand here with all my colleagues and certainly tell you that the frustration that we all feel should really culminate in some real positive action here. Thank you all for being who you are. I'm proud to be one of you.
On you, Louise. Just so you know, and it's also rumored, and we want to make members aware of this, that there are reports that they're going to come back in. Some said at 7, other reports say 8 o'clock to try to take up legislation. So we urge people to be close to the floor and be with Mr. Lewis during this time period. Our next speaker is Dina Titus. And while Dina is coming down, I'm going to give you the order of people right after Dina. Will be Marcy Kaptur and then Eddie Bernice Johnson. Dina.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank all of you for staying with us tonight. Others have spoken much more eloquently than I can, but I want to add my voice to this very proud chorus of Democrats calling for action. It was almost 2 years ago to the day that I stood in this very spot and asked for a moment of silence to remember, to mourn, to honor 3 people who were shot down in my district in southern Nevada. 2 were Metro police officers who were just having lunch, and 1 was a shopper at a nearby Walmart who stepped in and tried to help. At that moment, I became a member of probably the only club in Washington that people don't want to belong to. And that's the club of those of us who have stood on this floor and asked for a moment of silence. Since that time 2 years ago, that club has continued to grow, and we need to shut it down. We need to take action now that will help stop the need for those moments of silence. Now, we're only talking about reasonable gun legislation. It's not outrageous. Don't be fooled by the rhetoric of the other side that it's about gun ownership. I own a gun. I grew up in the South where a gun hangs over almost every mantle in every house. I now live in the West where guns are a big part of our culture. It's not about that. It's about trying to make our communities safer. So now we need to break that silence. We need to take action. We need.
And again, technical problems with the Periscope feed. We'll continue to monitor that feed from Representative Scott Peters of California. We've also been looking at a feed from Beto O'Rourke of Texas as the Democrats continue their sit-in on the floor of the House today, demanding a vote on legislation on a no-fly, no-buy gun control bill. Here's a tweet of Congressman John Lewis on the right and Congressman Jim McGovern of Massachusetts on the left. Representative Catherine Clark tweeting out that picture of Representative McGovern and Lewis holding the floor till we get a vote on gun violence. We are hearing that Republicans who met in conference this evening about an hour ago intend to come back to the floor for some sort of legislative action tonight. We are seeing some tweets from congressional reporters to that effect. Nothing official. You just heard a few moments ago from the sit-in as well that they're hearing the same thing. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Of course, if the House comes back into session, the cameras will come back on and we'll have our live feed. Until then, though, we understand the Periscope feed is back up. So we'll check in again with the Democrats sit-in on the House floor.
And we know he's still missing in action, as their party is missing in action. Derek Kilmer talked about the Appropriations Committee this morning. Nita Lowey's amendment in order to have no fly, no buy, and what the Republicans did to that amendment.
And unfortunately, back we are again. We're trying our best to bring you as much of the Democrats sit-in on the House floor live as possible, but we're relying on social media and a couple of Periscope feeds that we've been getting today from Scott Peters, Representative Scott Peters of California, and Congressman Beto O'Rourke of Texas, who have been participating in the sit-in and against the rules, providing some video of the House floor. The rules are when the House is not in session, the cameras go off. Those cameras are controlled and operated by the House staff. Same goes in the Senate that we cover on C-SPAN 2. Those cameras also controlled by the Senate. We simply take a feed here at C-SPAN. So when the House is in recess, as they are now, those cameras go down, and we're relying, typically we don't see anything, but today we're relying on some social media feeds to cover as much as we can of the House Democrats' sit-in. Again, we are getting some word through congressional sources, some reporters on the Hill, that the House plans to come into session at some point this evening and attempt to do some legislative work. The Democrats, you may have heard a few minutes ago on the floor, being warned that that is in the offing as well. A couple of tweets we've gotten through today. Here's kind of a fun one from CBS News. When Keith Ellison's mother summons him to the House floor and other unusual sit-in stories, it shows a note to Congressman Keith Ellison. Your mom called and wants you on the floor, summoning her son to this sit-in on the House floor. Looks like we may have the feedback up. Yeah, we'll give it a try here. The Periscope feed back up on the House floor for the Democrat sit-in. Let's take a look now and cover as much of this live as possible.
Names. But I do wish to read the eldest and the youngest from the San Bernardino shooting, where 14 people were killed. The oldest was Isaac Amaños, who was 60 years old, and the two youngest, who were 27, Sierra Claiborne and Yvette Velassen. And from Orlando, the oldest, Frankie Jimmy De Jesus Velasquez, who was 50 years old, and the youngest, 18 years old, Akira Monet Murray. I don't see why it's so hard for the Republicans to join us to meet this moral crisis that our nation faces. There should be no break if no bill is passed. When Nita Lowey finished her remarks this morning, and we lost the vote because the Republicans wouldn't support us on no fly, no buy, she said what's really at stake is your inconvenience versus the lives of our grandchildren and children. I thought that that was really an incredible statement, and I've been serving long enough to know this. When we passed the assault weapons ban during the 1990s, the NRA didn't disappear. They didn't go out of business. The gun shops in my district didn't go out of business. The ammunition companies didn't go out of business. But you know what happened? Fewer Americans were killed by the thousands because that ban was in effect. No bill, no break, no fly, no buy.
No bill! No break! No bill! No break! No break! No break! No bill! No break!
Last night, a person who worked on my staff for several years, his cousin, 19 years old, named Carmen Mounds Jr., died as a result of a shooting, along with Ashley Spence, who was 21, and Harold Cook, who was 39. To not recognize that this is an epidemic, to not recognize that this is a crisis, that this is beyond a natural disaster, because these disasters in all of our communities are man made. We must have a vote. We will not yield this floor. There will be an attempt to take this floor from us sometime tonight.
No way.
Nope. Stand firm, Democrats. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are shining stars, especially in the heart of Texas. Deep in the heart of Texas, no one shines brighter, Lloyd might disagree with me, than Eddie Bernice Johnson.
I apologize for my voice. I hope it relaxed. But I want to thank John Bush and Captain Clark for leading us into this day. You know, when I sit here and think about why we have to do this, it is disgraceful. It is disgraceful because what we're asking is so simple. Just a simple background check. Why do we need assault weapons on the street every day? And after every large gathering where people are killed, you'll hear someone say, oh, he was quiet. He didn't talk to anybody. He was by himself. After the fact, we learned that with a background check, that person would not have had a weapon. It is so simple to solve this. I don't know why there's such spinelessness among Republicans with the National Rifle Association. I remember in 1994, when we passed a bill, we lost the majority. That was senseless to me. Senseless because there's no reason why a simple thing like major guns should not be checked when you have a society that you have not provided for mental health. And when you have many people that are frustrated by what we're doing right now, they're frustrated because we have not been able to pass sensible legislation. It is time for us to do just what we're doing. It is time for us to take this stand and let the American people know that we are listening. Because we go along every day just like they're not even out there. And the NRA has its way. It's really troubling for a nation that is a leading nation in the world that cannot come together. People who are elected by the American people cannot come together to solve this problem. No matter what we do, it's not going to take everything away. But we can do simple things that will save many lives. Many, many lives, and especially children. It is unbelievable that we as a Congress can stand here every day with less than half of us, but almost half, begging for something to happen and get ignored and be called a political stunt. How many of you call this a political stunt? No. I'm serious about it. There's no way I'd sit here in this cold place unless I was serious about what I'm here for. The American people are serious. It is time for us to stand and stay until we get something done. It is time for us to realize that the NRA has not been elected here. They're not in charge. We are. We were sent here to take care of the people's business. This is the people's business. How many more people are we going to sit around and stand for silence when they get killed? And what is it going to do for them? It's not going to bring them back. How sad it is that just a simple background check cannot be passed in this body. How sad it is that we can't get war weapons off of the street. We're not at war in this country. Weapons should be reserved for war. And I'm not anti-gun. You don't have to be anti-gun to be anti-multi-shot weapons. And you don't have to be anti-gun to ask for a background check to make sure that the guns don't get in the hands of the wrong people. In addition to these, hopefully we can finally address mental health in this community, in this nation. I'm really tired of hearing about what the persons were like after they killed 45 to 50 people. So let's stand together and let's just say, no bill, no break.
No break! No bill! No break! No break!
No break.
No break!
She hadn't even been sworn in to her seat in Congress when she witnessed the devastation at Sandy Hook. Before she even took the oath of office, she was there for the families of those children. And she's been there in this House, serving along with Mike Thompson as co-chair of our Gun Violence Committee. Elizabeth Esty from Connecticut.
I am so proud to be standing here with my friends and colleagues tonight. The energy in this room, I want to let you know, is duplicated by a crowd that is growing outside the Capitol tonight. Of organically arising, of Americans who know that this institution of American democracy is about people's voices being heard. And they're being heard loud and clear across the country tonight. I am getting texts and tweets from my kids, from their friends, from my ministers, from my former ministers who have moved away, all saying, you stand together. You stand tall and stand up for the American people. Reporters are asking, what is different tonight? You've been here before, all of you. How many moments of silence if the death of 20 school children and 6 teachers wasn't enough? What will it take? It takes courage. It takes unity. And we are seeing that here tonight. And it takes civil disobedience. John Lewis has led us today because he understands that the vote is the most essential quality an American has. And right now, the leadership of this House has deprived the members of the public of vote because our voices have been silenced, because we have not been allowed a single vote in 3.5 years that I've been in Congress. In 3.5 years, not one hearing, not one vote on not one single bill to help keep Americans safe from gun violence. Not one. That's why we had no choice but to take over the floor. That's why we have no choice but to ensure that the vote of the people is reflected in debate and votes in this House. So to all of you who are gathered here today, thank you. And those who are watching, thank you. And text and write and call and demand that this House live up to the highest aspirations of the American people. We talk about tragedies. Tragedies are unpreventable. They're acts of God. That's not what we're looking at here. It's not. Since Sandy Hook, 100,000 Americans have been killed with a gun. Think about that. 100,000. Now, that number is so big, it doesn't even make sense. That's bigger than what we see in wars. Yet that is what the inaction of this House has allowed to happen. Think about the story of a single person. We've heard stories today of each individual. And when their lives are taken, families are ripped apart, and the ripples of that spread out through whole communities. So the damage is to tens of millions of Americans who are crying out tonight, act, do something. We need a vote. We need a vote. We need a vote to protect the American people. We're sworn to protect the Constitution and uphold it. We're sworn to protect the American people, and that is what's at stake tonight. No fly, no buy. If you are too dangerous to get on an airplane, what business do you do? Do you have legally buying as many weapons as you want and as much ammunition as you want? The American people cannot believe that this is true. If you think of what you have to go through when you go to an airport, take off your belt, take off your shoes, take out your eye drops, and stand through a scanner. But if you're a would-be terrorist, guess what? You can just go and buy whatever you want. That makes no sense. And it's up to this House to fix it. We need a vote on no fly, no buy. And we need a vote on background checks. 20 years ago, holiday shopping, but you probably didn't do it on the internet. And guess what? People buying guns, that's where they're going now. They're going to the internet. And so what used to be a small loophole, the gun show loophole, has gotten huge. It's about 40% of sales now. So frankly, it's kind of amazing we stop anybody with background checks right now. And we have. We stopped more than 2 million gun purchases. But it's kind of the stupid criminals we'll get now who are dumb enough to actually go to a federally licensed dealer. That's how easy it is. It was as if a terrorist waiting in line to get on a plane, fully loaded with a suicide vest, was allowed to pick to just walk on the plane without having to go through security clearance. Folks, we can fix this. There are some things that are hard. Getting up every morning when you've lost a child to gun violence, that's hard. That's really hard. That's what Nicole Hockley does every day. Her son, Dylan Hockley, was gunned down in his first grade classroom. And Nicole didn't choose this life. She didn't choose a life where she cries and gets up every day and travels America to try to help other families, to try to make this country safer, to try to make American democracy to live up to its promise. But she does, because that's what needs to get done. And what we need to do in this House, and what whoever occupies this chair needs to do, is allow us a vote. No bill, no break. No bill, no break. It's time for a vote. It's time for a vote. The families of America deserve no less from their elected officials.
From Washington State, and our leader on the Armed Services Committee, Adam Smith.
Thank you all for being here. I can't say it any better than those who have said it before, but what we're talking about is common sense. Two basic things. One, the right of this House to vote, which too often has been thwarted by this majority on issue after issue, not allowing us to vote. If they win the vote, they win the vote. But they ought to at least allow representative democracy to work. And on gun control, they have not allowed that. And the second thing is just basic common sense laws. I've heard a number of speakers from rural areas talk about the fact, they own guns. We're not talking about taking away guns from everybody. We heard during the Clinton presidency that he was going to take away everyone's gun. 8 years later, I still got constituents who have guns. We heard that President Obama was going to take away everybody's gun. 8 years later, we're still here. All we want is common sense. There's a number of different pieces to this, but the two that have been mentioned are so simple. We should have universal background checks, so if you are legally barred from buying a gun, you don't. It's very simple and very straightforward. We don't have that, but we have all kinds of loopholes that allow people to buy guns. And the second piece is, if you are considered a threat to this country, and this is where my Armed Services Committee work and national security work really hits home for me. If you are considered a threat to this country and are not allowed to fly on an airplane, then you certainly shouldn't be allowed to buy a weapon. I also want to bring attention to another piece of legislation, and I think Mike Thompson or John Lewis introduced it, that basically said if you are being watched by the FBI as a potential terrorist, you should be prevented from buying a firearm, and they should be immediately notified if you try to do that. That's what we're asking for here today. And I really want to applaud my colleagues for having the courage. Oftentimes, we say in the House, we don't have the filibuster, we can't stop things, we can't force things. Well, you're showing where there's a will, there's a way. That we will force a vote on these common sense gun control pieces of legislation. That we won't go until we get that vote. I want to say one final thing. I hope this is just the first step, because stopping gun violence in this country is not just about sensible gun control laws. I mean, that's certainly a big piece of it. But I'll mention just one other. Mental health issues in this country. We do not do enough. Many of you here served with Gabby Giffords. And I remember the day standing in this well when she resigned from Congress and she couldn't come back. It was one of the saddest days of my life when she wasn't able to do that. The person who shot her and killed those 6 other people and shot the other people in Tucson, it was obvious to everybody who knew him that he had a major problem. And this has been the case with many of these shootings. And yet our laws are inadequate to do anything about it, to deal with the mental health problem. So I hope that what we force here today is a vote on this legislation, but larger than that, we force a comprehensive approach to all that contributes to the senseless violence in this country, to the over 30,000 deaths a year that are caused by firearms. We must stand up, we must force this vote. So I applaud you for your effort here today. I want to go home like everybody else, but I'm not going to do it until we get a vote on this. So, no break.
Stacy Classes, where are you? Stacy here? Then quickly we'll go to Seth Moulton.
Seth Muldoon. Here's Seth right there. Muldoon.
Just so you know, Seth will be followed by Jim Costa, who will be followed by Lloyd Doggett.
I came to this house from the United States Marine Corps. I had to carry an assault rifle every single day to do my job. I've seen the effects of gun violence firsthand. I know what it looks like when someone gets shot. I know what it looks like when one of your friends or colleagues is bleeding out on the battlefield. There is no place for that on America's streets. There's no place for that in America's schools. That's right. There's no place for that in America's movie theaters. There's no place for that in America's nightclubs. And there is a big difference between a Marine or a soldier who's trained for hours upon hours, months upon months on the rifle range to know how to use a weapon safely. There's a big difference between that and a civilian, a terrorist, who can walk into a gun shop or a gun show or go online and legally buy weapons of war today. Every single amendment to the Constitution has reasonable restrictions. Even the First Amendment has reasonable restrictions. In fact, even the Second Amendment has reasonable restrictions. I not only carried an assault rifle with me every day, I carried a grenade. I was trained to use a grenade and carry it safely. But we have made a decision as a society that we will not allow civilians to walk around with grenades. We don't allow civilians to walk around with landmines or rockets. There are a lot of weapons of war that are reasonably restricted here at home. I support the Second Amendment, as does just about everybody on the floor today. But you don't have to be opposed to the Second Amendment to believe in reasonable restrictions to keep our country safe. And what we're asking for is so reasonable. If you're on a no-fly list, if you're not allowed to fly, you ought not to be able to buy a gun.
That's right.
That's right.
And if there are problems with the no-fly list, then let's fix it. But tell me this, if there are so many problems with the no-fly list, why do we have the no-fly list? Why are these people not allowed to fly? I'm sure that has nothing to do with the fact that everybody in this body flies home every weekend. Is the freedom to travel not afforded to Americans? Is that not a right that we care about? Do we live in a government that can go and tell you you're not going to get on that plane just arbitrarily? No. That's a basic freedom. It's so basic we didn't even have to include it in the Bill of Rights. If there's a problem with the no-fly list, then let's fix it. Universal background checks. 9 out of 10 Americans believes we ought to have universal background checks if you buy guns. Now, think about the system that we have today. Think about it in terms of flying. We're talking about flying. Imagine if our security system for the TSA were that if you went up to an airline ticket counter and bought a ticket from the airline, you had to go through security. But if you buy that same ticket online, don't worry about it. Just go right around. You don't need to go through security. You bought that ticket online. That's the system we have. Those are the laws that we have for buying guns today. That's absurd.
It's absurd.
It's absurd.
It's absolutely absurd. How many of you would get on a plane if you saw everybody who bought that ticket, bought their ticket online, just going right around security? I don't think any of us would be comfortable flying. And yet, that's perfectly acceptable when it comes to buying guns.
I like that. That's good. Yeah, that's good.
When Speaker Ryan took that seat, took that chair that's vacant right now, he spoke about working with Democrats and Republicans. And he said specifically that if we could just have an intellectually honest debate in this House, we could do some good things for the American people. An intellectually honest debate. Well, it's not intellectually honest if you can't even conduct a study on gun violence. That's not intellectually honest. It's not intellectually honest if we cannot even have a debate in the House of Representatives on reasonable restrictions to keep communities safe.
That's right.
It's not intellectually honest if we can't even be on TV when we're here because the Speaker of the House has shut off the TV camera.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And it is not intellectually honest if we cannot even have a vote. Fundamentally, what we're asking for tonight is just a bit of honesty. It's honesty to do our jobs, to represent the American people. When 9 out of 10 Americans out there in our country today agree with what we're asking for, think we're reasonable, we ought to just do our jobs. That's what we're here to do. Just do our jobs for the American people. Let's just do our jobs.
Let's do our job.
Let's do our jobs.
Debbie Eagle just showed me a post. And in that post it said that they were going to come here and remove us from the floor.
You better have a crane.
Are you ready? Let's go. Are you fired up?
Yeah.
Are you ready to go?
Ready to go.
You ready to stand up for America?
Yeah.
You ready to stand for a vote?
That's right.
As members of Congress, we have to ask ourselves, at what point are we going to have this honest discussion about public safety in America? At what point are we going to have an opportunity to discuss the impact that hate crimes are having throughout America? When? Like many of you here, I strongly support the Second Amendment. I grew up in a family with guns that used them for hunting and for self-protection. This isn't about the Second Amendment. When will enough be enough? If now is not the time, then when is the time? The deadly shooting in Orlando could have happened anywhere in the United States. It has, sadly. Just last night in my district, a 20-month-old was shot and killed in front of his parents. Fresno Police Chief Jerry Dyer stated that a tragedy occurred in our city last night. Chief Dyer is absolutely right. And the sad reality is we do not have a consensus on the appropriate policies needed to prevent these tragedies from happening again, whether it was in Fresno last night, Orlando last Sunday, or anywhere else around America where this has happened too often. We have to stop playing politics if we're going to have an honest conversation on how we prevent hate crimes and other violent crimes that continue to happen in communities across our land. We have to have that discussion. We are a legislative body. We have to be able to do our jobs. The American people deserve better from members of Congress. Sound bites and blaming others does not translate into improving policies that make Americans safer. And whatever differences we may have in this room, we all have a common goal. We want to make Americans safer. I urge my Republican colleagues then to bring the no-fly, no-buy bill to the floor of the House.
That's right.
Bring it to the floor. And after we have that discussion, that debate, and that vote, we ought to do what we're supposed to do as members of Congress. And that's bring other legislation to the floor, have committee debates. We can have endless debates, committee debates about Libya. It seems to me we'd have enough time to have the thoughtful discussion within the appropriate policy committees to hold hearings so that we can discuss these issues and bring together meaningful legislation that will have bipartisan support that we can pass into law. Why? Because we all want to make Americans safer. And that's what this is all about. So let's urge our Republican colleagues just to do the right thing. And that is to bring this bill, to begin with this bill, no buy, no fly, because Americans want us to make them safer, right?
That's right.
No buy, no fly. That's what we need to do. Let's start there. Thank you.
Make America safe again.
Yeah. You guys got a charger? There's your banner.
From Texas. Jan, I think that ought to be repeated, but Jan just said the theme here is very consistent. Make America safe again. Make America safe again. Make America safe again. Someone who does that every day that he's working in the Ways and Means Committee is Lloyd Doggett.
All right, John. You know, we are sitting in the House tonight with John Lewis and our colleagues because too many of our Republican colleagues have been sitting on their hands for so long when it comes to gun safety. Short moments of silence here, followed by very long periods of inaction, of doing nothing. And as I've been on the floor with so many of you for the last several hours, we've begun to hear from our constituents around the country. And I just want to share with you one message from Miss Trinity Rayburn in San Antonio, Texas, who wrote me a few hours ago. I write to you with the heaviest of hearts. Born in Texas, being around guns is nothing new to me. I grew up around them. I like going to the shooting range myself. I understand that guns are bred into Texans' life as deeply as saying, y'all. My husband and I, though, are expecting our first child in about 7 weeks. I'm terrified that I will have to explain to my son what a mass shooting is one day. I'm terrified to think about the fact that my son may be the victim of another Sandy Hook type shooting, and she calls for reasonable gun safety legislation. I want to talk to you just a moment about fear, because there's very legitimate fear of a young mother or mother-to-be who might be dropping off their child at school or a child care center. There's fear of a father who drops off his children to see the latest movie at a theater, as happened in Colorado. There's fear of family members who might just want to be out for a good night's outing, as happened in Orlando. There is legitimate fear that we do need to make America safe again, because it's not safe if terrorists and potential terrorists can get their hands on a gun wherever they come from. That's legitimate fear. But I want to talk to you also about illegitimate fear, and I'll tell you where that resides, in that chair right up there, that empty chair. It is the fear in that empty chair in this House leadership that we might actually do something. The whole notion that we might come together. Now, we know they have the majority. We know they control the agenda. What is it that they are afraid of? Is it accountability for what they do and don't do? Why not permit this House? We can't control the outcome, but to have a reasonable and fair, open debate, open to all amendments about this issue of gun violence and the way it is affecting families of all political persuasions in all parts of this country. There is a fear of doing that that is totally irrational and illegitimate unless it is just to block any accountability with reference to our elected officials. We need that kind of open debate. I just heard the Speaker say that he wanted to be sure there were due process rights for people with their constitutional Second Amendment. Well, if that's all he's concerned about, bring your bill out here and let us discuss what is reasonable due process after a potential terrorist has been denied a weapon that could do great harm, not before. But let's have a discussion about it. We don't have a monopoly on truth. There's no political party or individual in this body that has a monopoly on truth. But coming together, if you're not fearful, in an illegitimate way, fearful of a reasoned discussion, we can find a way, as they always say, to let the legislative process work. That's what we're calling for.
Let us vote.
I think we probably need to stay until we get a vote and not recess. And finally, I just want to add a word of thanks to groups like Moms Demand Action, who have been demanding action. They've been demanding it in San Antonio, in San Marcos, in Austin. I know all across this country demanding action, and they're out here tonight outside the Capitol demanding action. Because as important as it is that we're sitting here while they sit on their hands and we talk to one another and talk to the American people, nothing is more important than what groups like Moms Demand Action are achieving all around this country. If they're out there tomorrow, if they're calling their official, if they are speaking out on radio, at every opportunity over social media. We will achieve change. We will stay here. We will demand accountability, and we will get the safer America that our families deserve.
Amen. Go Bill! Go Bill! Go Bird! 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 Go Bill! Go Bill! Go Bird!
Next speaker, whose father also served in this chamber before he did, the great Lacey Clay.
Thank you so much. Let me say that this is my proudest day in this house. And I am a child of the 1960s.
All right.
My father was a civil rights leader, along with John Lewis. Let me take this opportunity to thank John Lewis. Standing up. My generation and future generations stand on your shoulders. That's how we got here. Like my friend Cedric Richmond said, that's why we're here, because of what the sacrifices you made. I represent the community, my hometown is St. Louis, Missouri, which includes Ferguson, Missouri. St. Louis and Ferguson, they notice that there is a certain tone deafness in the leadership of this body. And it emanates from the top. Speaker Ryan and Leader McCarthy, you're tone deaf to the needs of the American people. Let me share with you that my community, St. Louis, Ferguson, has experienced its share of gun violence, starting in 2014 with Michael Brown. But even more tragic than that, in August the 19th of 2015, a 9-year-old girl was in her mother's bed doing her homework. She was a straight A student. Jamila Bolden. And she was shot through the walls with an AR-15. Killed that little girl, 9 years old. So it tells me that, you know, if we weren't so tone deaf in this body and over on the other side, we probably could have saved that little 9-year-old girl if we had had the assault weapons ban still in place. We might have saved her. But if we had saved one, it would have been worth the effort. It would have been worth the effort. Innocence. So the people of Ferguson, people of St. Louis say to Speaker Ryan and Leader McCarthy, stop being so tone deaf. Right. Listen to the American people. Right. Listen to the needs, wishes, and desires of our country and act on it. Don't sit in your little comfortable places. Come out. Come out and address the issues that mean something to us. And so, let me pay homage to my friend and colleague, John Lewis, for starting this.
Yes.
I hope the other side has heard us today, and some of the tone deafness goes away.
Yeah.
Thank you, and God bless.
Empty chair. You want to say something? They're coming to the floor.
Thank you, Lacey. And immediately after Raul speaks, as we said earlier, we're going to have John get up and explain, because a lot of people have never been involved in a sit-in before. And so we want everybody to get an education and understand everything that might happen. And we don't know, but that's why you're all here. But someone that's always there for us, day in and day out, great leader from Arizona, Raul Grijalva.
Of course, John Lewis, thank you very much, sir. John Larson and Ms. Clark for organizing and getting us all here. Very important day. And I'm really honored and proud to call all of you here my friends, my colleagues, and fellow Democrats. If we think back a second, it was mentioned by other speakers. In this House, a talent, a fine person, a fine legislator, a rare human being was taken from this chamber. She's no longer part of this chamber. My colleague and neighbor, Gabby Gifford, who continues to lead a fight for gun safety and ending the senseless gun violence in this country. I thought after the killings and the horrors that occurred in Tucson, that this House, at the very minimum, would act on behalf of one of our own. Nothing. From Tucson to Orlando, and all that accompanied those massacres that we all know about. What we got from this House and the Republican leadership and the Speaker was nothing. A moment of silence, yes, and then back to nothing. We today are telling Speaker Ryan and the Republican leadership, as was said before, enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
And they can avoid the reality. They can avoid trying to deal with this issue. But you know, a lot has been said about the American people's cynicism, their frustration with Congress. And what is happening today is they are finally realizing and seeing for themselves that there are members of Congress that are here today, the Democrats, that are fighting for them. And the American people are realizing that they have those members in Congress and that are fighting for their families, for their future, and yes, their security and their safety. So we have to tell, with this demonstration and this protest and this action today, tell Ryan, join the American people.
Join the people.
Join the fight.
Join the fight.
And give us a vote. Let the American people hold us accountable. Let the American people feel like they're not being used. And let the American people know for once that they have a Congress that is fighting for them, their families, and their kids. It's up to you, Ryan.
So, as all of you who were listening today, maybe the best speech ever on the floor of the House of Representatives, and there's been a lot of good ones, was given today by our own John Lewis. John? the floor is yours. Let's hear it for Catherine Clark, too.
Thank you, John Larson. We owe John Larson. Amen.
Yes.
We owe John Larson. This young man, this brother, is standing here for hours.
Yes.
It's done a superb job. John Larson. Thank you for your dream. You had a dream. David. I want to thank each and every one of you for finding a way to get in the way.
Yes. Speak up.
Thank you. Thank you for getting in trouble. Good trouble. Necessary trouble. But you did it. I never ever thought that one day, after sitting in many days and many nights during the 60s, in 1960, but I had on my hand a few pounds lighter, that one day I would be more than lucky but very blessed, not just to sit in, but to sit down on the House floor with all of you great and good Democrats.
Oh, wow. Nice.
This is wonderful. You today, there's some people sitting here since early this morning. Because you came to the floor at 9 o'clock, 9:30, during 5 minutes. Look what time it is. You're still standing.
All right. Still
standing. By sitting down, by sitting in, you're standing up. That's right. For the very best. We have a right to protest for what is right.
Yes.
This may be the floor of the House, but this is the people's house.
Yes. People's house.
They sent us here to represent them.
That's right.
That's all we can do. Demand a vote. Our people are hurting. Our people are suffering. They want us to do something. So we have a moral obligation, a mission, and a mandate to do something. And never, ever give up.
Never give
never,
up.
Ever give in. Never lose that sense of faith. Never lose that sense of faith. We can do it. We're not even born. We're not even a dream during the 60s. We studied the way of peace. We studied the way of love. We studied the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence.
Yeah.
You've been a great group today.
Not done.
Not over yet. It's not over.
Not over.
Not over.
We don't know what is going to happen.
Right.
There's all type of rumors. But I said to you, we win in a victory.
Yes.
The American people are with us.
Yes.
So my advice would be orderly, peaceful, and respect the dignity and the worth of all of our fellow colleagues and human beings. When the final analysis said we are one people, one family, we all live in the same house, the American house, and it doesn't matter. We all are brothers and sisters. We're one family. As I said to some of you earlier today, maybe our foremothers and our forefathers all came to this great land in different ships. Yes. We're all in the same boat now. Don't let nobody turn you around. Nobody. Hang on.
Hang on.
Hang on. Don't give up. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. You know, during the 60s, I got arrested a few times, 40 times. Beaten and left bloody, almost died. But I didn't give up. I kept the faith. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. I don't know what the end is going to be, but my idea is just stay here. Stay here. You're bearing witness to the truth. We shall win. There's a victory on the other side.
Yes.
Well said. Okay? We have more bridges to cross, and this is just another bridge. We may not be walking over the Alabama River across the Independence Bridge, but this is just another bridge. Mm-hmm. It is my responsibility, it is my great pleasure to be so lucky to introduce or just present our leader, our speaker, Nancy Pelosi.
Aren't we blessed, sir? I know so much. I'll use my mother of five voice then. Aren't we blessed to serve with John Lewis in the Congress? Aren't we blessed to have him as a friend? And the American people, all the American people have him as a friend. As he was speaking, I was thinking of Dr. King always, because John, the two of them did so much for our country. When he went to India to learn nonviolence and civil disobedience, etc., that was a gift that he brought back, the nonviolence that John has taught us. And in that, the word in Sanskrit, satyagraha, means two things. It means nonviolence, and it also means insistence on the truth. And that's what we're doing here. In a nonviolent way, insisting on the truth. And the truth is that we cannot continue to have moments of silence without a plan of action. Moments of silence that are a substitute for taking matters into our own hands to make sure we make the American people safe. John talks frequently about come on, Johnny, get in the middle. It doesn't matter, the microphone doesn't work. Frequently about us being all God's children and the spark of divinity that is within us. It's in all of those people whose lives were taken, all of their families who are suffering. And outside the Capitol now are a large crowd of people gathered to echo what is happening in here, to bear witness to this insistence on the truth. And let's take John's guidance. Whatever they want to do in the next few minutes, we're here after that. We're here until this truth is insisted upon, and that we have a vote, and they give it a chance to succeed, because people's lives depend on it. I want to salute, John, I'm sure you do, all of our members. They have been so magnificent. The global response that we are all receiving to your activism on the floor today is really, thank you for giving people hope. For giving people hope. People say, where is hope? I can't find hope in my life. Hope is where it's always been, sitting there between faith and love. Faith and love. We believe. We and that we must. And that gives people hope in the charity that love that will that gives us strength to do our jobs. John Larson, thank you so much for being one of you have been so magnificent. And when the press and others are saying, the people outside, how long will they stay? I said, it's totally up to them. It's totally up to you. And John says we should stay after these votes, and we will stay. I'm sure all of you have something more to say.
Give us the schedule, Mr. Hoyt.
John Lewis has told us the schedule. You know, when I was the majority leader and people would ask me sometime, what time are we getting out?
Yeah.
And I would tell them, as soon as we pass the bill.
Yes.
All right.
As soon as we pass the bill.
Right.
I want to place this in context for you and for all of our constituents.
Yes.
The average number of gun deaths in America is 32,964.
Oh, a year. A year.
Robin Kelly, earlier this week, stood in our caucus and said, you know, we'll have a moment of silence for the 49 who died in Orlando, and a moment of silence for others where numbers have died. She says, but in my city and in our country, we have individuals die. We have 2, we have 3, we have 4, not all at the same time, but equally important.
Yes, that's right.
In a country that focuses on individuals, she said we ought to recognize the worth of every single life.
That's right.
32,964. My friends, if we had risen and given each one of those people 1 minute of silence, it would have taken us 91 and a half days at 6 hours every session. 91 days. We have taken just a short time on this day to speak for all of those who lost their lives. For all of those, those of you who may have heard me speak earlier today, our chaplain started his prayer, thank you, Lord, for this day.
Yes.
We speak for all those whose days were taken away from them.
Yes.
We speak for the families who will grieve every day for their loss. And we speak today for over 250 million Americans. 80% of America says, pass these bills.
Yes.
Our friends in the NRA say, people kill people, not guns. This debate is about making sure that those people who shouldn't have guns don't get guns. To say, if we determine you're too dangerous to fly, then you're too dangerous to have a gun. And we sit and stand on this floor to say we want to make sure that the vetting process is thorough so that our neighbors, our friends, and our families
can have some sense of security in their church, in their grocery store, in their theater, in their neighborhood, in the Congress on the corner, as Gabby Gifford reminded us.
That's right.
I talked to my friend, the majority leader today, who came over and said, how can we stop this? Vote.
Vote. Give us a vote.
Vote. And I said to him, put those two bills on the floor.
Right, right.
That's it. And let America know where its members stand on making their country safer.
That's it. Thank
on where their members stand on making sure that terrorists don't have guns.
Simple.
On making sure that when we vet somebody, it's a thorough vetting so that we know that that person who went to Charleston's church, Emmanuel Church, Mother Emmanuel Church, who should not have been able to buy a gun.
No.
But we did not give sufficient time for the check.
That's right.
That's all we stand here for.
That's right. Ridiculous.
And our people expect us to stand.
Yes.
As they were benefited and blessed by John Lewis and all those who sat on a bus knowing full well the danger that would be on the other side at the station.
That's right.
For those who sat along with Jim Clyburn on a stool in a counter just simply asking to be fed. And what they received in return was the taunts and the physical abuse for simply wanting to eat. And John Lewis and so many of us have walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis. I know Nancy and Jim and I and so many of you have walked across that bridge for the simple request to register to vote in the greatest democracy on the face of the earth. And we stand here saying, Paul Ryan, give us the right to vote on these two bills. Help make America safer, and let's do it now.
Let me now present to you a young man that I've known for more than 50 years. More than 50 years. During the 60s. And if someone had told me then that the two of us would be serving in the House of Representatives together, I would say, you crazy? Out of your mind? You don't even know what you're talking about. So Jim, my friend, my brother.
Here we are.
Honored to be here with you. Jim Clyburn, your sister leader.
Thank you so much. Thank you, John. Thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you so much for your friendship. And let me begin my remarks by thanking the media. Thank you. Stands out as a great example of what we mean when we talk about a free press and why we need one. We have some people aspiring now to even shut that down. But thanks to them, the American people got to look in on and listen to what is taking place on this floor. The mics were cut off. The camera was cut off.
Periscope, man.
Let me just say a couple of things. When I went away, finished high school and went away to college back in 1957, that lets you know that John has forgotten how to count. Ain't nothing young about me anymore. But in 1957, I went home, I went to school, my full intentions were to follow my father into the ministry.
All right.
But I was always told you had to be called. And I kept listening. And after getting out of jail for the third time, I decided that that wasn't working too well. So I went home to share with my dad the fact that I was changing my mind and I was not going to go to the seminary. I thought my father would be very upset, and probably he was. But my dad said to me on that day, "Well, son," he said, "I suspect the world would much rather see a sermon than to hear one." What we have seen today is a fulfillment of what my father said to me over 50 years ago. We have come to the floor of this house to allow the people of this great country to see a good, productive sermon in our works. And I thank each and every one of you for participating. Now, someone asked me earlier whether or not we were going to retire for the evening. I say we may retire in the morning, but I think we are going to work through the evening. John has been a great friend, a great motivator. And I want to say to you, John, if you never do anything else again, both these jobs. Now, I'm going to have to talk to John Lawson a little later on, because last night, when they were about to go to John Lewis's office to talk about today, they deliberately excluded me. In fact, John looked in my face and said, "This one is not for you." But I'm glad that he allowed me to participate. Thank you so much. And so I want to close my comments. Maybe later on tonight, I'm hopeful that all of us will get a chance to take sections. I have divided Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham City Jail into 46 parts. G.K. Butterfield gave me the letter, but I went to my office and I got to lay it out, and I got lines. I want us, at some point this evening, each one of us take a section of that letter. And let's read it to the American people. Because if there's no other thought to be gotten from the letter, there's one I want us to leave on the minds of everybody. When he said to us in that letter that the people of goodwill seem to be making a much better use of time, the people of ill will seem to be making a much better use of time than the people of goodwill. And King said to us in that letter that we are going to be made to repent, not just for the vitriolic words and deeds of bad people, but for the appalling silence of good people. I am here to say today that the good people in this house have broken their silence. We will not be silent any longer. Thank you.
We want to make sure that the primogenitor of this, John Lewis, of course, is the soul and the conscience of this body, the nation, maybe the world. And but there were two people who came to him and dared to pose the question: can we do this?
Speak up, Tom.
Yep. Two people who stood out and said, "We've had it. We believe in John Lewis. We believe that you gotta get in the way to get a vote." And that was David Cicilline.
Thank you all. I have never been so proud
proud in my short tenure here, but what an extraordinary day. Many of us have had a chance to go to Selma with John Lewis. And many of us have had that chance to go over that bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And what really struck me when I was there with so many of you on the 50th anniversary of that march that Terry invited us to come and join her, was how steep the rise is in the middle of that bridge, and that you cannot see over it as you approach. And I thought about what that meant for John Lewis and everyone else that day when they finally crested that bridge and saw what waited for them. The hatred, the violence, but they kept going. John Lewis crested that bridge for all of us, for the right to vote, for our country. And we have to crest this bridge for all the parents, for all the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, who have lost their family members to senseless gun violence. We don't have all the answers to this today, but if we follow John Lewis, if we follow our hearts, the incredible wisdom that we've heard from all of you today, we will start. When we pray, move your feet. And that's what all of you are doing. That's the example of your life and your love for all of us. And that is how we are going to change this gun epidemic and stop this violence.
Who's been an inspiration to all of us in so many parts of our life and really the life of our country. And to say that, so many of our constituents, so many people across this country have been so deeply hurt by gun violence, have lost loved ones, have lost children, and always wonder, is Congress ever going to do anything about it? And we showed them today that we have heard them, and that we're committed to this fight, and that we're committed to staying here until we get some responsible Republicans in the House to make sure the most dangerous people in this country don't have access to firearms, to make sure we have universal background checks, to do something to protect their families. We can never really respond to the grief and the pain they're in, but we can do everything possible to make sure it doesn't happen again. Thank you to everyone who's been part of it.
We've been joined by another senator.
I just brought Dunkin' Donuts.
Scott Peters,
Thanks, Scott
Beto.
Thanks, Scott Peters.
Yes, you guys
And Beto's been there.
Y'all been awesome. Awesome.
We've been blessed throughout the day to have so many of our colleagues from the United States Senate join us here on the floor to give us encouragement. Well, Elizabeth, you're the first one to bring Dunkin' Donuts.
I think it's her birthday.
We're holding out the, Robin says Durbin's going to bring pizza.
It's her birthday.
But
Something I've been watching all day is the wonderful service that Scott is doing to our
we want all that they've done today.
That's right. 1 second. I've been watching their incredible team feed and batteries all day long. So in order to keep the number alive, if anyone has battery packs or anything that they can provide, this incredible team, please bring them. Because if the batteries are go out, we won't be able to continue.
Great point, Gwen. Bring batteries. And water. Mike.
Can't see.
We're few in numbers here. We're in the minority. But the people watching this streaming, they're in the majority. You can help us win this battle, America. Call your representative up. Call these Republicans up on the phone and tell them we want to vote. America, You can win this battle tonight for us.
Show them the telephone number. All right, that's the telephone number, everybody.
Thank all the people in the gallery who have come out.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a quorum of our caucus here?
We have more than we need for a quorum.
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to stay as long as I have to get a bill on the floor. I would like to make a motion that we stay as long as we have to have a presence here in the Capitol until
those in favor stay.
Makes a great point. Let us please also, because we're going to hold this floor, but we'd like to have a lot of people that have been here and spoke already on the floor go out and thank the people. We thank the people in the galleries, but there are people outside that are supporting this effort. So please, and staff, we want to thank all the staff for this effort. When we last left, we were about to hear from Raul Grijalva. So let me summon him back as we begin our work for the rest of the night. Raul!
Act 2.
Like I said, Elijah Cummings. Has there been anyone that's been more out front in the defense of democracy than Elijah Cummings?
First of all, let me say this, and I am very proud of the Democratic Caucus. In my 20 years of being here, this has to be one of the highest moments of my career.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I want to thank you for doing this. At the same time, I want to put all of this in context. And John, I want to thank you for all that you've done and everybody else that has anything to do with this. You know, as I was listening to the speakers, I could not help but thinking about my ride back to Baltimore. And every night when I ride back to Baltimore, we look for something called fresh balloons. Fresh balloons. And in my neighborhood, what happens is that when somebody is gunned down, they tie balloons onto the lampposts. And every night when I come and ride up my street, I look for the fresh balloons. Which means that somebody has been gunned down. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, a few years ago, my nephew, who was like a son to me, was robbed at gunpoint in his apartment at 5 o'clock in the morning. A junior at Old Dominion.
Yes.
And I shall never forget visiting his room the next day and seeing his brains splattered on the walls. Ladies and gentlemen, enough is enough. Enough is enough. You know, when I thought about what was happening here today, I said this is a significant moment. But we cannot let this moment just go by.
No.
Ryan is sitting in his office right now, depending on us to leave this floor.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he is. He's just gonna wait us out maybe a little bit. But John is right. We have got to say, this is not about us.
No.
This is bigger than us. This is about generations yet unborn. In Orlando. Ladies and gentlemen, the question is whether we are accepting a new sense of normal.
No.
That should not be normal for people to be enjoying their lives on a Sunday morning, and the next thing they know, they're blown away. That can never be normal, and we should not allow it to be normal. For generations yet unborn. Somebody said a little bit earlier, you know, every 2 years, we come here and we swear that we are going to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. We throw our hand up. And we also say that we're going to protect the citizens of this great country.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it would be legislative malpractice for us not to deal with these issues. No fly? No fly? No fly.
Joyce Beatty from Ohio.
Come on, Joyce.
I come to this floor tonight to say the two most powerful words we can say, and that is thank you. Thank you to my colleagues for allowing this junior member to stand here with these senior members, to be able to answer the question we will all be asked, why are we doing this? We are doing this because we can remember, or we have been taught, that when John Lewis and Martin Luther King marched, there was result. We know when Rosa Parks sat down, we can stand up today. So I come here to say to all of those listening, we come here today because we know today makes a difference. We know today will save the lives of the children, of the sisters and brothers' names that we have read off on this floor. But let me end by saying we are here because we took an oath. We come to this floor every day and we pray and we pledge and we say, in God we trust.
Yeah.
So today we are trusting in one another. We are saying to the constituents out here, it is now your turn. Let us not do this in vain. You are to hold accountable every person you vote for or don't vote for, because Republicans are not in this room. The Speaker of this House, the third most powerful person in the lineup, the chair is empty. The chair is empty. We opened this session and the Speaker in that chair walked off the floor and vacated the seat. They want to adjourn, but those parents and those siblings and those relatives, they have memories, because since senseless. Deaths happen. The chair should not be vacant. You should not let the Speaker or the Republicans off the hook for this. You should remember that we stand here united because we stand for you. Don't let the deafs not stand for something. So today, thank you. Thank you to all those who are watching this, because today we make history. Thank you, Rosa Parks. Thank you, Martin Luther King. Thank you, John Lewis. Thank you to our powerful leadership that did not stop us. They were not afraid. And this was something that did not just happen. This happened because we stand here united. We represent this wonderful America. Thank you, Democrats. Thank you, Senators.
Here's the next four people. Read them off. The next four people who will speak will be Scott Peters, Mike Doyle, GK, and Mike Capuano.
No, it's cute he keeps putting this up there, but this doesn't work. This doesn't work.
Scott, wait, who's doing Periscope?
We have a rule in the House. Senator, please don't sit there.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Senator.
Oh, sorry. I don't understand.
Get in the way. Just don't get in the way there.
You're waving to America right
That's not what we mean by getting
Hi,
in the way.
America!
We have a rule in the House that you're not supposed to take pictures when the House is in session.
We're not.
And I noticed that Mr. Lewis was sitting on the floor of the well. I don't think that's in the rules either. That's right. But the point is, if they will turn the cameras on, we will turn our cameras off.
That's right.
And that's our deal. That's the deal we offer. And when we were very frustrated today when they turned the cameras off, we thought that was wrong to not let the American people know what was going on here. Turns out there's an app for that.
That's right.
So I discovered Periscope today, and I want to thank Beto O'Rourke.
Yes, Beto!
Eric Swalwell, Don Meyer, everyone who was in here trying to share what's going on here, because it's the only way people will know. So thank you very much.
Great for Periscope.
My wife Lynn and I have 2 children. They're older now, but we took them to first grade and they came back.
Yes.
We took them to church and they came back. We took them to the movies and they came back. They went to college and they came back. Now they go to nightclubs. So far they've come back. But who should have to live in fear of that? What would it be like to be that family that got that call that those kids didn't come back? We're not asking to change the world here, and I'm not angry, but I'm tired of this. Every day this year, every week this year, I've come to this floor for 1 minute and read the names of victims, not from all of the publicized shootings, but 1,000 shootings since Sandy Hook, not even 4 years. And just read the names, just so those people won't be forgotten, in hopes that someday we'll be able to take some action. So I'm proud to be part of an effort to really try to make it happen. But we're not asking to change the world. We're not asking to export California's gun laws to Wisconsin or Alabama or Pennsylvania.
That would be good.
We're asking. That would be great. Some people have said that up here. That's not what I'm saying. That's actually not what we're asking for. What we're asking for is votes on 2 things. If you go to Walmart to buy a gun, you get a background check to make sure you're not a felon. We all understand that. That's fine. But if you buy on the internet or you go to a gun show, you don't get that background check. All we're saying is close that loophole. 90% of Americans support that. 80-some% of gun owners support that. Everyone gets it. And now we're saying let's also include in that net terrorists. So if you're a sworn enemy of the United States, maybe someone who's gone to fight with ISIS, we're saying don't sell that person a gun. Turns out 90-some% of Republicans support that. Only 85% of Democrats. What's wrong with Democrats? But that's a pretty overwhelming majority. So we're not asking for much. We just want a chance to vote. Just a chance to vote on this. And whether you're approving a Supreme Court justice or doing gun laws, people expect us to take up the issue and vote. And we may disagree, and we may lose, folks. We understand that. We may lose. But at least we will have given the people the chance to see their government work, and we won't be shutting down this place without that kind of dialogue, without democracy. So thanks to everyone for being here.
We also wanted to be in a position to thank all of the various groups that have been involved today. I call on Jan Schakowsky to read that list of people who are supportive.
We know that we're supported by groups that have been working for years and years for sensible gun safety legislation. I just wanted to mention some of the major groups. I'm sure have excluded some here. I apologize for that, but I wanted to thank Everytown, Americans for Responsible Solutions, that's Gabby Gifford and her husband, the Brady Campaign, the Coalition Against Gun Violence, Organizing for America, Move On, Moms Demand Action, States United Against Gun Violence, Center for American Progress, thank you, Americans United for Change, Violence Policy Center, Every Child Matters, Media Matters, Newtown Action, Sandy Hook Promise, Moms Rising. I want to say too, we've been joined by the LGBT community and many fights now around the country. And I know there are many groups, women's groups, civil. We thank them all for being partners with us tonight.
And they're outside.
And many are outside. Thank you.
PK, followed by Mike Doyle, then Mike Capodanno.
Colleagues, it's been a long day. I was here from the beginning, and it's going to be a long night. I was here this morning when they turned off the microphones, when they shut down the cameras, but thank God our Periscope friends have stood with us all day long. If they had not had the forethought to start Periscope and start broadcasting this to the world, I don't believe that this protest this evening, the sit-in this evening, will be as powerful and successful as it is. And so I certainly want to thank them. And we heard Charlie Rangel this morning, one of the first speakers. Charlie Rangel came to the floor and said that in the 46 years that he has served in this body, this is one of the proudest days of his 46 years, and that is absolutely correct. We are so honored. We are so thrilled that all of our colleagues have stayed together today and made this very powerful statement. Thank you to John Lewis. What can we say about John Lewis? The Congressional Black Caucus loves John Lewis. He is our special colleague, and we thank John and Catherine Clark and David Cicilline for all of their work. But colleagues, I know this is clear to all of you, but I just want to say it for emphasis. This is the beginning of a movement. Tonight and today, what we have done is not to be seen in isolation. This is the beginning of a movement, and the American people know it. I'm getting the emails and the tweets, and you are as well. People are out on the plaza right now joining with us in solidarity. They are in the gallery. This is the beginning of a movement. Mass shootings must come to an end in this country. And I'm not sure, colleagues, that the American people really understand the depth and the breadth of the mass shootings that we're having in this country. They see the ones that are on the evening news, but you know, since the beginning of this year, there have been 136 mass shootings in America. 136. What is a mass shooting? A mass shooting is defined by the FBI as one killer killing 4 or more victims. And there has been 136 mass shootings in this country since the beginning of the year. And so we are ready for Speaker Ryan to come to the floor. First we were told it was going to be 8 o'clock. Then we heard it was going to be 9 o'clock, and now we're hearing 9:30. Politico has got breaking news that they're going to come to the floor, and they're going to confront us, and they're going to call up legislation for a vote. But we're ready. We're ready to stand in the way. We are ready. No bribe, no buy, no bill, no break. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Thank you, John. I want to first thank John Larson, who's been here from the very beginning. Our dear friend John Lewis, David Cicilline, Karen Clark, Kathleen Clark, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Catherine Clark, thank you. It's the American people. You have the power right now. I know this is being streamed at CNN. And thank you to our younger members that understand this new technology. Yeah, Scott, you. So that when they shut the microphones and the cameras off, there was still a way for us to talk to the American people. And I want to talk to the American people tonight because the power is in your hands to change things tonight. In a little town called Wilkinsburg, next door to where I grew up in Swissville, outside of Pittsburgh, there was a family having a barbecue in their backyard. Husband and wives, aunts and uncles, children. Two gunmen, one with an AK-47 and one with a high-capacity clip handgun, started firing in that backyard, killing 5 adults and an unborn child. 49 bullet casings were found in that yard. This happened in a matter of less than 2 minutes. We have seen in communities all across America, from Sandy Hook to Charleston to San Bernardino to Orlando, the carnage that these weapons of war can cause. I ask America tonight, what is the civilian purpose for a high-capacity clip that allows you to shoot 30, 50, up to 100 bullets without reloading? You don't hunt with that. You don't protect your home with that. I come from Western Pennsylvania. We've got a lot of deer hunters in my district. We don't hunt with those kinds of guns. That's not a hunting rifle. Why should someone be able to buy a bullet that pierces Kevlar? Does the Second Amendment give us the right to buy a weapon that would only be used to pierce our police officer's vest or one of our troops? Why should anyone be able to buy that? Why should anyone be able to buy a body armor? What's the purpose of that in a civilian society? These are weapons of war, pure and simple. What we're asking for tonight is the very beginning. We're asking tonight to say, if you're on the no-fly list and our government suspects you of maybe being connected to a terror organization, so they don't want you on an airplane, we don't want you to be able to buy a gun. How much of a no-brainer is that? What Americans are against that? It's not even a partisan issue. More Republicans actually favor a ban on that than Democrats, but that approaches the mid-80s to 90%. Who's against background checks? When those babies were slaughtered in Connecticut and we couldn't even get a background check passed in the United States Congress, you know, a lot of us just shook our head and said, what's it going to take? What's it going to take for us to finally act? Americans ask us time and time again, when is the United States Congress going to do something about this violence? Well, I tell you, colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, watching this at CNN tonight, that the time for us to be silent is over. It's over. Right. We are going to demand votes on this thing. And we are not leaving the well of this House. We are not ceding this well to the House Republicans until Speaker Ryan gives us a chance to vote on this. America, this is your chance. You're watching this tonight. Call them on the phone. Call them on the phone and tell them you want to vote. You can make a difference. They'll listen to you. You're their bosses. You're their bosses. Call up those members of Congress and tell them that America wants a vote on these two bills. And remember, this is just the beginning of a fight. We're not giving this will up. We're not giving this will up. This is the people's will, and we're going to hold it.
Mayor of Somerville.
My whole life I've hated being part of a theater. I think a lot of the stuff that a lot of people do is a waste of time and very interesting and all that. And to be perfectly honest, when I was having discussions with some of my friends last night on this and plotting and instigating and all that, I had my doubts. It's like, all right, When your friends are in, without my world, when your friend jumps in, you jump in.
That's right.
Even when you think they're crazy. All right, you're in, I'm in. What are we doing? On the floor, 9:30, keep it up. To be perfectly honest, I thought this would be done around noontime. We'd have our fun, maybe some people would make the news, and we'd go on our merry way and the same old stuff would happen. But it changed. It changed quick. It changed because of you. I never expected this many members to show up and to stay and to speak with such passion and commitment. You've made me proud to be a member of this House. You've made me proud to be a Democrat. You have made me proud to call you my friends and colleagues. And I want to say the same thing to the rest of the people that are here and the people in America who have been supporting us. Now, I can count when the Republicans come back, they will win the votes. I get that. I get that.
Hope not.
But they will lose the battle. Yeah. And they will lose the hearts and minds of the American people. Because that's not what they want. Now, I did this in the 60s. I never expected to be doing it in my 60s. John Lewis can do it.
The 70s for us,
We can all do it. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I need a shower.
Yeah.
I need a beer. Jack and Coke.
No beer.
But guess what? My commitment is reaffirmed by you.
Yeah.
My commitment is reaffirmed by the support of the American people. And my commitment is reaffirmed by the reason we're here. I'm not here for a bill. I'm here for little children.
Yeah.
I'm here for little old ladies. I'm here for the innocent people that have been slaughtered in each one of our districts.
That's right.
As I said earlier today, I know that there is nothing that we can do to stop it all. I know that. But I also know that doing nothing is not the answer. In life, in this, and everything else, you do what you can do to make it a little better. And if all we can do is a couple of bills that save one life, it's worth this today.
Yes, it is.
It's worth it tomorrow, and it's worth it the next day. As long as you are here, I will be here.
All right.
Thank you for your commitment, and thank you for standing by.
Jim, we want you to know that 70s are the new 50s. So, the next three speakers, if they could come down here, so that we will be Paul Tonko, John Yarmouth, and Keith Ellison.
All right.
Paul.
Thank you, John. I represent the capital region of New York, and like so many districts across this country, we've witnessed the terrible news of those slaughtered in our neighborhoods. And I want to thank John Lewis, Brother John, Representative John Lewis, for having changed the tone of this nation for decades' worth with your involvement in seeking justice. Thank you, John, for leading us today. Thank you, Catherine Clark and Dave Cicilline, for leading us in this effort on the floor. Thank you to our leader, Nancy Pelosi, for connecting us with advocates on the steps. As we and our colleagues and those who are speaking for fairness here join together in a demonstration peacefully to call for change. It is an honor to be with you, my colleagues, on this historic day, one that has spoken freely and peacefully to change that we need in these halls of government. It's important to note that America is listening, and America is supporting our voices here today. They believe in this effort, and we're guided by faith and truth and determination. Now, it's been said over and over this evening that this has been dubbed a political stunt. No. A political stunt. Well, the Republicans in Washington, I'll make that distinction. Republicans in my district tell me we need these reforms. Democrats and independents and unaffiliated tell me we need these reforms. But Republicans in Congress are denying the progress we need. So I say to the Republican colleagues, see it for what it is. It's a human outcry for justice. I say to the Republican majority, see it for what it is. A passionate plea to respond to our communities across this nation. I say to Republican leadership in the House, see it for what it is. A justified indignation of status quo that won't allow for bills to come to the floor for a vote. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. We know the stories. We've been there. Republicans and Democrats, Democrats and Republicans visiting with families, loved ones, when they've witnessed the life oozing out of their family members and friends. Their dreams suffocated. Their lifetime shortened because of the acts of unkindness perpetrated by those who should not have guns in their hands. And so we respond with compassion. But what do we see here from this context on the floor? After we've witnessed those individuals nodding, unbelievably shaking their heads in denial that they've lost their loved ones, people whose hearts are broken, their eyes deepened with sadness. And what is our response from some in this House? Toss a blind eye toward those saddened eyes. Offer a hardened heart to those broken hearts. That's not government at the best. That's insensitivity in its grossest format. So what we need to do is go forward with progressive qualities of legislation that speak to the rightful response. If you are deemed dangerous and unacceptable, you should not be able to purchase a gun. That's what we're asking for in the vote. If you're going to purchase a gun, as you do in a commercial exchange, and you have a background check, why is that background check avoided, not required with online purchases or with gun show purchases? Let's close that loophole. That's what we're calling for. Bring these votes to the floor. Show that your heart is really connected with those who you've witnessed in your own communities, who have had this carnage impact their lives. So with that, I join with my colleagues pleading the leadership of this House to bring the votes to the floor. Let us respond. Let us show where we're at. No fly, no buy, background checks. Please bring the votes to the floor.
No
Please.
bill.
Thank you.
No
No
bill.
bill.
No bill.
No bill.
No bill. No bill.
The man from Kentucky, who, when he came to Congress, came wearing a pin called Article 1, and every day has lived and breathed that and been a voice of reason in the United States Congress, John Yarmouth. John Yarmouth.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your leadership. Catherine, thank you. And John Lewis, our brother, our inspiration, not just today, but every day. Thank you for what you have brought to this body and this country. Like so many others, I am incredibly proud of this day and this moment. I don't know whether I'm more proud of this than the day we passed the ACA. Close call. But this is a very proud moment. It's not just a proud moment for me, it's a very comfortable moment. I'm comfortable because I know that the work that we prevented from being done on the floor today is not nearly as important as the work that we're trying to get done. That's right. And I know the American people feel that way. We all know that. We're seeing what's on social media. We're seeing the reaction. I got a call from a teacher from Kentucky, not in my district, teacher from Kentucky who said, "Thank you so much for what you're doing today. I had to shield my students from a man with a gun."
Wow. Wow.
That's what it means to the American people. On September 14, 1989, a man named Joseph Westbecker, who had been treated for psychiatric problems, in fact was on mental health disability from his employer, walked into that employer, Standard Gravure in Louisville, Kentucky, it's the company that prints the Courier-Journal, and gunned down 8 of his colleagues, his co-workers, killed 8 of them and wounded 12 more. It was that incident, along with several others around that time, that convinced this Congress to pass the assault weapons ban. That assault weapons ban has now been repealed. It is mind-boggling that in this day and age, we have not made progress in combating mass violence with firearms. We've lost ground. 27 years after Standard Gravure, we're still fighting to prevent massive gun violence against our neighbors, our friends, our constituents, and our loved ones. It's tragic. Thank you all for creating this effort. Thank you all for your emotional support in the gallery.
So a freeze up of the Periscope feed that's been provided for much of the day by Representative Scott Peters of California. The Democratic House sit-in continues. Democrats in the House of Representatives demanding a vote on gun legislation, the so-called no-fly, no-buy gun legislation, coming in the wake of the recent mass shooting in Orlando, Florida. The House Democrats began things at 11:25 this morning, just after 9 o'clock East Coast time now. John Lewis was on the floor at 11:25, the Democrat from Georgia, and the House attempted to come into session at noon Eastern time, got as much as the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance out of the way, but the Democrats created enough of a ruckus that the Republican leaders took the House then into recess, subject to the call of the chair. And that's when the cameras went off. We do not control the cameras. C-SPAN does not own or operate those cameras. They're controlled by the House. And so when the House is out of session, which it is technically now, those cameras are turned off. So today we've been relying on a couple of social media feeds, primarily through the Periscope app that has been provided by a couple of members participating in the sit-in. Beto O'Rourke of Texas and Scott Peters of California. I believe we have one of those feeds back up and running now, so we'll take you back live to the House.